everybody. I hope that you are all going to have an amazing week. This week, we are going to continue talking about accommodations, but we are going to go back a little bit and really focus on employee rights and what that means. So, I have a PowerPoint. Shocking, I know. And like I said, we are going to go over something that is called ADA and employee rights. Now, we are really going to focus on employee rights this week, and that's because ADA, this guy up here, is so important that I want to give enough time to go over that and not feel like it's crammed in. So we are going to talk a little bit about ADA and introduce it, but really focus on that employee rights. So our lesson objective is students, that's you guys, will be able to define ADA and employee rights, which leads to our learning objective of you will take those and apply those words and definitions of ADA and employee rights to your workplace barriers and accommodations that were outlined in the last lesson. So last lesson we talked about workplace barriers, and you did a great job of going through Ask Jan and highlighting, depending on your disability, what workplace barriers resonated with you. So now we're going to kind of go over why we have the ability to have accommodation. But first, our essential questions for the lesson. What is ADA? What are employee rights? Why is ADA important? Which, like, we're gonna talk about it, but mostly that's going to be next lesson. And how do employee rights keep us safe at work? So for our anticipatory set, please look at the pictures below, our 3 pictures. What is wrong? What do you see that's just like, oof, that's not right? Please pause and discuss as a group. All right, so first of all, this first picture right here, I'm gonna try to annotate. You guys know that this really gets my screen not happy. I'm thinking that if I'm in a wheelchair or having, a walker or a cane, this is going to be pretty tricky to get up on the sidewalk. Now this guy right here, so I don't know how many of you know this, but when there are the parking spots that are reserved, the white lines really do matter, this section right here, because that's where there's space for somebody in a wheelchair or another kind of, motor disability to be able to get out and to navigate. So it's not like they're right on top of the next car. So this is actually I lost my mouse. A very important part of the parking spaces is those white lines, and a trash can or whatever that is, and it is definitely keeping that person from being able to get out of their car. Oh, there's my mouse, come on. And then the next one, sorry guys, this guy right here, this one's kind of tricky. There's no Braille. So there's none of those Braille lines to read. So that is a barrier. These are barriers. Maybe not workplace, they could be, but they're barriers. All right, good job, guys. So just to review, what is a workplace barrier? Does anybody know? Go ahead and pause. If you said something at work that is hard for you, that is right. That's a workplace barrier. These are different barriers. They're access barriers. People aren't able to access the sidewalk. Can't access the parking lot and getting out of their car. Can't access the restroom because I don't know what it is. There's no Braille for me to read. Which leads us to employee rights. We are going to talk about this today. What is an employee right? Well, I defined it as laws an employer must follow to keep you safe and in good working conditions. So they're not optional, they're laws. They have to happen, and they are your rights. They're everybody's rights, not just people with disabilities, not people without disabilities, it's everyone. Which leads me to the types of laws. Now there's more, but these are kind of the main ones that I think stuck out to me. Number 1, so important, civil rights and non-discrimination law. So the law that is going to keep you from being able to get work, being able to access work, doesn't matter your race, your ethnicity, if you have a disability, your age, your sexual orientation, it doesn't matter. That doesn't come into play, and this law protects that. And there's more, but that was the one that came to me. Family and medical leave. So it guarantees that you can't get fired. You get time off if you have a new baby, or if you're sick, or you have a family member that's sick that needs help. Now, you don't get paid for it. There is paid maternity leave, but for this family medical leave, it's unpaid, but it doesn't let your employer fire you. And I believe it's 12 weeks that you get that time. I could be wrong, it could change. Workers' compensation. If I get hurt on the job, I'm not liable. So it's keeping me safe in that way. If I'm running to catch a student and I slip and fall, I have workman's comp that makes sure that I get the treatment that I need. OSHA, Occupational Safety Health Administration, workplace safety, big, those PPEs. Does anybody know what PPE stands for? Personal protective equipment. That falls under OSHA. So making sure that we all have access to what we need to keep us safe at work. And then the Fair Standards Act, Fair Labor Standards Act, I'm sorry. This makes sure, a couple of things, but make sure that we get paid what we should, so that we get at least the federal minimum wage, which if you want bonus points, look that up. I think it's $7.25. I just gave it away. I don't know why I did that. And also has laws around child labor. So if you're under 18 and you have a job, there are certain laws and regulations that your employer, your boss, has to follow to make sure you're safe. Now, I know it's a lot of information, so tell me what you learned from me just talking. Please pause. You can annotate, you can write, you can discuss. Match the picture with the description. So for example, helps us if we get hurt at work, I would draw a line or say the name, whatever it might be. Go ahead and pause. All right, quickly I'm just going to go through. It helps us if we get hurt at work. That's our workman's compensation. Helps keep the work environment safe. That is our friend OSHA. Occupational safety, that's a good hint. Make sure we get paid fairly. Another hint, fair. Our Fair Labor Standards Act. Helps keep discrimination out of work. Those are our civil rights and non-discrimination. So you see we have people, all diversity. Then make sure we have time off, unpaid, if having a baby or having an ill family member. That's our Family and Medical Leave Act. Ooh, look at all those lines. Okay, great, thank you. So I'm going through this very quickly. So please feel free to take your time with your staff, go back, review, talk. If you want to pause here for the day, that's fine. But I just want to present the definition. We're not going to go too much further into this today because, like I said, it's such an important thing that I want to make sure we grasp. We're going to go over this all next week. But ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it is a law that prevents discrimination of people with disabilities. So, very big and encompasses all of these guys. But for our closure, I have found a really good video, a news video. We're going to watch it. I'm going to play it here. It's up to you and your staff depending on time. I'm going to also attach it as a link. So if you'd rather stop the video here and then at a certain point go back and watch the video I'm asking us to do, you can do that. But I want you to think while we're watching this video, what questions do you have about ADA? So this question could be on the law itself, how it applies to you, how it impacts work, or something totally different. And then please write this in your feedback document, that document I shared with your staff through Teams, because I'm going to use your questions and hopefully answer them in the next lesson. So like I said, I'm going to take time right now to play the video. Oh, I had it up. Okay. It's kind of long. It's, I think, very informational and cool. And once again, this is on ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Exactly 30 years since President George H.W. Bush signed the Americans with Disabilities Act into law.
Hold on, that's gonna be ironic. Wow, that's ironic, guys. It's a law. We're watching a video on ADA, and they don't have closed captioning, I don't think. Is that very ADA accessible? I don't know.
And once again, we rejoice as this barrier falls, proclaiming together, we will not accept, we will not excuse, we will not tolerate discrimination in America.
The ADA banned discrimination based on disability. It helped shape the lives of Americans previously left on the margins by requiring employers and institutions to provide equal access. It represented a giant leap forward, but to this day, it has not been fully implemented. To talk about this, I want to bring in Dr. Feremi Okunlami. He's assistant professor of family medicine and physical medicine and rehabilitation at the University of Michigan and spokesperson for Guardian Life in their Equal and Able partnership. Dr. Okunlami, how has the ADA affected your life?
Thank you for having me and for covering this important milestone. You know, that question's been asked multiple times over the past few days, and I've given various, permutations of this answer, but what it really is, it's just allowed me to have the same life that other people have. There are lots of, fantastic and amazing things I could say about allowing me to travel and to get an education and to spend time with my family, but the bottom line is that the ADA is not something over the top and extra. It literally just provides equal access to the same rights that non-disabled people have.
And you, I understand, were partially paralyzed in a pool accident a few years ago?
That's right. After being an academic All-American track athlete at Stanford, I did my medical school at Michigan, and then in my third year of orthopedic surgery residency at Yale, I had a spinal cord injury, which left me paralyzed from my chest down with very minimal use of my upper extremities. I then had some return of motor function and went back and got a master's degree in engineering, science, and technology entrepreneurship at Notre Dame. And that is when my partnership with Guardian began, because if it weren't for the comprehensive disability insurance that I had, there were not things in place that allowed me to have equal access. And therefore, I worked with Guardian to be able to get additional resources that let me then go back to work. I got a master's, as I said. I finished a family medicine degree, and I was appointed to the St. Joseph County Board of Health by Mayor Pete Buttigieg. So, I say this not to pat myself on the back about my own story, but merely to demonstrate that I am not the first or the best or the only. I am just one individual with a physical disability that would have had significant limitations in what I was given the opportunity to do, not because of a lack of ability, but because of a lack of structure and resources to then give access to people like me.
Well, your story of resilience is remarkable. Let's talk a little bit about the history of the Americans with Disabilities Act. How did it come to be, and who pushed for it?
So we've had multiple civil rights movements that have happened in this country, and I think this is a very poignant time to discuss it, given the two pandemics of racism and COVID-19 that we have right now. But the ADA was another civil rights movement from multiple individuals with physical disabilities, with cognitive disabilities, intellectual disabilities, people that were seen as other, that were marginalized, that were voices that were not seen. I think that a great example could be, if anyone wants to watch something called Crip Camp, that was actually produced by Barack and Michelle Obama. It's a movie that talks about some of the activists that were fighting for equal rights, and then finally were able to get this signed into law on July 26th of 1990. And as you said, it was George H.W. Bush that was the one that signed it. And then we had the ADA Amendments Act that came in 2008. And that really was just trying to expand the definition of disability to make it harder for individuals to then try to discriminate and try to exclude people with disabilities from being able to get access to these resources.
And then the law was amended in 2008. So how significant was that amendment?
So it's somewhat unfortunate that that amendment even had to happen. But what that did was, it was really allowing people that had to do extraordinary things to justify or demonstrate their disability to then be able to get access to those resources, because people were then having a difficult time being able to get these very rights that were then signed into law. And so the Amendments Act really created it such that there was a broader definition, and it was meant to create easier access for people to get these things. And I'd like to remind everyone that these things that I refer to were merely the floor. They were the minimum standard of what should be done. And even that minimum standard is not something that's done in all public spaces across our country.
And there are still plenty of obstacles to be overcome because 30 years after the original law passed, only a fourth of nearly 500, for example, 500 New York City subway stations are ADA compliant. And there are many other examples like that all over the country. So, how do we address these ongoing issues?
I like to talk about intersectionality when that question comes up, because I think too often we focus on one specific group and then we think that what we need to do should just suit them alone. But with respect to disability, disability is ubiquitous. It does not discriminate based on race or gender or ethnicity or socioeconomic status. And so I think it's a wonderful example to use about how we are not doing what we can for our most vulnerable populations, for our minority populations, people with disabilities, people of color. And so I think that what we could do is that if we do a better job of creating access for one, then we'll be able to create access for all. And so something that does not work for someone with a disability should not work for anyone. And I think too often we focus on the number of people with disabilities that may be impacted and the cost that will be incurred by trying to make some of the modifications or renovations that are needed. But I often tell people that while everyone can use a ramp, not everyone can use the stairs. And therefore, there should not be a significant difficulty in building more ramps that create access to the things that everybody should need to be able to have.
That's such a great example. Are there challenges for the disabled that remain that are still not covered by the ADA?
Absolutely. So the ADA was not intended to be some all-inclusive law, right? That would have been an ideal. But what it was meant to do is really get people to recognize the fact that the bare minimum is not there for everyone. And so I do think that not only is it that the law wasn't intended to be all-encompassing, but the actual practice of the law, people then implementing the things that the law says, that isn't something that's being done. So I tell people, while I could give lots of examples of things that aren't technically covered by the ADA, I would love for everyone to be doing the bare minimum. And that's not something that already happens. So I'd say, easy examples as curb cutouts, ramps to get into buildings, elevators, accessible stairways and hallways so that people can maneuver around, creating the appropriate amount of space. These are things that are simple. And I want to be very direct when I say too often we focus on physical disabilities and we don't acknowledge the mental health disabilities, learning disabilities, those invisible disabilities that people carry every single day and have just as much of a stigma associated with them, but that people can't always see the struggles that you have when your disabilities are invisible, yet you still have a lack of access like the rest of us with physical disabilities just are able to demonstrate in a visible way to more people. So I think that we have a lot of room to go, but I don't want to be completely negative because there's been a lot of progress made. And I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you today if it weren't for people like Guardian, my family, the friends that have supported me, and the resources that do exist. But I think on this 30th anniversary, it's a good time for us to look towards the sky and what the limits could be up there and not worry so much about the floor and where people should be having basic standard access.
All right, guys, thank you so much for sticking with me today. And I will be sending out some different activities. Well, not really activities. I'm going to send out a vocabulary sheet and then some visual supports because this is a lot of great information, but can definitely be overwhelming. All right, I will see you all next week. Thank you.